This is Dan Paul again, and welcome to Maya Rockstars Part 4. So, Maya Rockstars is designed to help you get it up and running with Maya as quickly as possible. It assumes no prior knowledge. So, we started on creating this little scene here in 3D. We used primitive objects, we tore some apart, and I'm just going to clean up this scene a little bit here and have just a few objects in here to play with. And you notice I can marquee around a few objects if I have the selection tool or any of these tools. I can just kind of marquee around them and delete them. So I'm going to go back to my transform by hitting W and sort of arrange these in a somewhat composition, some sort of a composition. And so we can start playing around with colors. So with colors, it's really about materials. So materials in Maya are there are a number of attributes other than color. I want to start with color because I don't want to go too much into detail about creating shaders yet. We're just kind of trying to create a very, very basic scene here and get us up and running with Maya as quickly as possible without bogging ourselves down with too many details on how every single window works, because there are so many windows to cover here. So let's take a look at what we can do as far as making this scene have some materials. So let's take a look at the materials by viewing our window. We go to Window, and we'll go to General Editors here, and we will open we're going to go to Render Editors and say Hypershade. So let's open the Hypershade. So the Hypershade is where, most of your assigning of materials are. So materials are not just colors. They have a bunch of different surface properties. But let's start with the colors just so we can get some color into this scene. So you'll notice everything kind of has this matte grayish kind of color to start with. And they're all using a default material. So this is a Lambert material. This is what we call Lambert. So Lambert is a material that's sort of a matte material. There's all kinds of interesting shaders down here that work with some of the different Maya rendering softwares. So we're going to just start with the basic ones. So the most basic ones, and probably the most versatile one, is going to be the Fong E. So you notice when I go to create, when we're in the Hypershade here, we have another create menu within the Hypershade. So if we go to our materials, we can choose one of these materials. So Lambert was one of them, just flat, and that's a default material we have. But we're going to create a Fong E because that has many different properties that we can add and emulate a number of different surfaces here. So let's go ahead and create the Fong E here. So you might have this material view. It might be in your attribute editor here, or it might be here. So you can always pull that up. But anyway, this is how your Hypershade should ideally look. And let's take a look at just the color. So we want to go ahead and click on the color here, and let's just give it a nice color. Let's say maybe orange or something, right? And say done. And well, we want to pull it over to the hue. Notice how I clicked on orange here, but it still stayed gray because our color picker has, sort of like with Photoshop or something, you have this monotone grayscale over here, but we can kind of drag it over to the right to add more saturation. Probably don't want to overdo it, but let's say like sort of a middle goldish color there. So I have this sort of goldish color here. I have this Fong E shader. It looks kind of brown here in the view. It looks a little different than the material view. But now I want to assign it to an object. So there's a number of ways to assign materials. I'll show you the first one, which I usually use because I usually have a mess of things in my scene, and it's difficult to use the other way that I'm about to show you, the secondary way. So I'm going to go ahead and click this guy here, and I'll go ahead and say assign material. So I did that by right-clicking on the material. First I clicked the object, then I right-clicked here rather than left-click, which have selected it, and then I said assign material. And so then I had now that assigned material is there. Now if I want to go ahead and create a new material that is a different color, I'll go ahead and create another Fong E, and And you can give these a name, by the way, if you want. I'll go ahead and call this, let's just call this blue, for example. And we'll give it a blue color. We'll say, of course, we have to go over to the right here to get a really high saturated blue. And we'll close that out. Whoops, didn't confirm it. So we have to say done here. And so the other way to apply a color is to just sort of middle mouse button and drag it on there. So I just middle mouse button and dragged it on there, and there's my colored material. So I would say go ahead and just kind of make a scene now and play around with all those. Just play around with a few colors and have fun with this, and add a few different shaders to your different objects here and have fun with it. And then we'll come back and go into some of the more some of the different aspects here of creating shaders.